Is KDB the greatest ever Premier League midfielder? Because that's the claim that's circulating on social media and the mainstream media today.
I don't think he is. And yesterday, by the way, besides the goal, I don't think he had a good game overall, to be honest with you. I really don't think he created enough chances for City. I thought when he got into the final third, he didn't do enough. Listen, I love KDB. I'm not one of the ones who have an agenda against KDB. I think the last 5 years, the best two players in this league, it's fair to say, have been KDB and Salah. I think those two have been the kind of the faces of the Premier League. From KDB's perspective, though, it's not just about, and this is where me and you disagree. It's not just about putting trophies together. I've never been that guy, because here's what works against KDB. Even if I want to use your logic of the trophy thing, in 18-19, they won the Premier League with KDB not playing there for 8 months. He didn't play a single game. He was injured all year long, and they still won the Premier League. So it questions maybe the importance of Kevin De Bruyne. Listen, Kevin De Bruyne in the Premier League, he's done it. He's done it for Man City. He's lifted his team. He's uplifted his teammates. He's a fantastic midfielder. But I think I don't have him in as the best Premier League midfielder. Maybe top five, but I don't think he's the best. I'm taking maybe 3-4 guys over him. And for me personally, like in the Champions League, this is where he has to do it. This is where he has to do it. And some may argue that KDB isn't even the best City midfielder of all time, because they've got Yaya Toure, David Silva. Many people will argue that point as well. Like, you could speak to a City fan and ask him who's the greatest, midfielder you've ever seen. Some would tell you Yaya Toure, because they tell you that singular season they've never seen anything like it. Some would tell you David Silva, because he's so underappreciated, maybe because he's just someone who keeps it simple, keeps it ticking. So first he has to be the consensus best City midfielder of all time before he gets into that argument.
Yeah, because none of those City midfielders have ever been crowned as or really pushed as the Premier League GOAT midfielder. So if he's not City's best, he can't be the Premier League's best. That makes sense. I'm just one of these people, and people do this. And this is an area where me and you will agree, because this is where I defend Steven Gerrard a lot. Because people will say Gerrard can't be top 5, can't be top 10, never won a Premier League. And you know me, I don't base it purely just on trophies, although what you win is a big part. But the reason I rate Gerrard highly is because he did win trophies. He won multiple European trophies, Super Cups, UEFA League, and of course the Champions League. For the kids, the UEFA Cup is now what the Europa League is, but it used to be bigger in the early 2000s. It was treated differently, really.
It did.
He won domestic trophies as well. A lot of people don't like. No, you got to judge it purely. It's like a lot of people say that the Premier League Manager of the Year should be judged purely on what they did in the Premier League, and I disagree, because you don't play in just the Premier League at any one particular time. If you're a manager that's gone deep into all comps and done brilliantly in the Prem, you've got a better shout than someone who's just done well in the Premier League and gone out of all the other competitions early, because they've had less games to manage, less of a team to rotate, less problems to deal with. They haven't had a really big game on a Wednesday night and had to get the team ready for a massive game on a Saturday, as an example. Some teams get a weekend off if they go out in the FA Cup early because there's no Premier League games. But yet, if you go deep, you're having to manage that. To discount that is ridiculous. The same as players. So I think when you look at Lampard, you look at Paul Scholes, you look at Gerrard as examples. I think you can throw, there's a few other names that will go into that as well. But
Cesc Fabregas, definitely.
Fabregas is a great example of a player that you throw into
Patrick
that.
Vieira as well.
Patrick Vieira's done it. When you look at those guys, and Patrick Vieira is a hard one in the Prem because he didn't have this. What I'm about to say, though, is those guys all had massive European moments that will live on for the next 100 years in English and Premier League football history. All of them. Fabregas, by the way, I remember seeing him with a fractured leg do a masterclass against the great Barcelona team at the Emirates as an example. Paul Scholes, multiple brilliant performances in a Champions League. And in the year that we went to win it, scored one of our greatest goals in a semi-final to knock out Barcelona. We know what Gerrard has done. Lampard, the same, scoring in finals and everything else. And I do believe that when you're comparing people, when they're all being compared to each other, yes, stats are important. Yes, ability is important. Yes, trophies are important. Moments as well, though. Those moments that live on forever. And I do think what he got yesterday, KDB, was a he had a moment. Now they have to win the tie for the moment to count because they get knocked
Yes.
out at Etihad. The goal from and performance from KDB yesterday, that clutch moment disappears because it becomes insignificant. They go through though. That's one of his moments. That's kind of like his Skull semi-final moment. He's Gerrard Olympiacos moment as an example. A massive goal where they were under a lot of pressure in the game at that point to come through. So yeah, for me, I don't look at him as the Premier League's GOAT as of yet. Do I think he's got if he's here another 3, 4, 5 years and keeps doing this? I think he's there's a shout for it. I just think it's slightly premature right now to crown him that, but it does seem to be a big push at the moment to crown this Man City team the greatest ever, their striker the greatest ever, their midfielder the greatest ever. And I do believe we're just being a little bit disingenuous and that there's a little bit too much recency bias.
And we're being premature as well. Like, here's the thing. Like, United treble, and you asked me about this on the top 6 show and the show before that, and this is why for me the United treble 99 was more difficult. For example, context matters, and like, with all due respect, City haven't won it yet. Like, City haven't done it yet. So like, the thing is, I think we're being a bit premature. Like, and by the way, I have to be fair. Some Liverpool fans were doing this last year, not me, but some were, the whole quad stuff. Like, if we do the quad, blah, blah, blah. Okay, but let us do it first and then we'll say it. Thing is, from City's perspective, like, the truth is, the moments thing you said is 100% right. Because when Liverpool beat Barcelona 4-0, the Messi free kick at the Camp Nou, which was an unbelievable moment, no one recalls it. No one really speaks on it. No one looks at the 18-19 Champions League and goes like, that Messi free kick was unbelievable. They just speak on the comeback. So now, for this to actually become a moment, not only do they have to win the tie, they have to win the Champions League as well. And the truth is, even if they do get past Real Madrid, the one of the Milan sides is going to be facing them in the final. And now, of course, for me personally, I'm rooting for Inter today because I just don't trust AC Milan whatsoever. I'll be sorry with you. I think AC Milan against whoever, whether it's Madrid or Man City, the floor will get wiped with them. So for me, I trust Inter more, which is why I'm rooting for them today. But like, when it comes to this whole thing, he has to win the fixture. He has to win the Champions League. And the reason why, for me, it matters is Kevin De Bruyne is absolutely surrounded by talent from top to bottom. Kevin De Bruyne is surrounded by a complete team. So there is nothing missing in the team. He's got the manager as well in Pep Guardiola. He has it all. So he has the manager, he's got the players, he's got the bench, he's got the squad, he's got like everything is there for him, to kind of take the game by the scruff of the neck and have these iconic moments. KDB's had moments for me in the Prem. He's had moments like that in the Prem. But the difference is the Champions League is won in moments. Like, you can win a Champions League without being the best team in Europe. The Chelsea team that won it weren't the best team in Europe. The Liverpool that won it in 04-05 wasn't the best team in Europe. I think you need to maybe be at least a little bit respectable or good in your league to be counted the best team in Europe. Because, for example, I can make the argument 18-19 Liverpool were the best team in Europe because we got 97 points. We competed for the league. We were there. So, okay, you can make that argument. But if your team's really bad in the league and you win the Champions League, you still can't really be called the best team in Europe. So, for me, with Man City and Kevin De Bruyne, this is way too premature. Like, people are just going OTT. Pep Guardiola this, KDB this guy that, this guy that. Like, we need to just chill out.
Win it first. And that's I was thinking that last night when they were 1-0 down. It's like, if they do go out in this round, it's not even that it's being discussed. I don't think it's wrong to discuss it and say they could be. It's the way I saw, for instance, Sir Alex's teams being slagged off before City had even achieved what they've done. And it was kind of like, that's a little bit premature. And slagging them off, even if they are better, doesn't suddenly make that Man United team in 99 bad for you to start kind of attacking them. And I typically don't respect people's opinion about if somebody thinks, I don't know, if somebody thinks that Jay-Z is better than Drake, but all they do is attack Drake, or the vice versa, I kind of switch off from listening. I'm like, well, we know that neither of them are bad. So you slagging one off means that there's an issue there for me. There's a comment here that says, Terry, didn't you say that Salah was a GOAT? And see, again, you're misrepresenting what I said. I said the same thing about Salah as I'm saying about KDB. Salah is on his way to being in that GOAT conversation. KDB is on his way to being in that GOAT conversation. So no, I did not. So I did say that Salah is Liverpool's greatest ever Premier League player, but that's just my personal opinion on that. With all due respect, KDB has surpassed Steven Gerrard by a mile. Is what's
No, he hasn't. No, he
here.
hasn't. It's about context for me. Listen, I keep the same energy for everyone. Even when my argument I can use trophies against someone, I really don't. Like I never use trophies. And the thing is, for me, here's how I look at it. If I put Gerrard in the City team, they'd have been Champions League winners by now. If I put KDB in that Liverpool team, I don't think it works. Like I don't think we get what we get. You need to understand Steven Gerrard, the stuff that he done for Liverpool Football Club, like is beyond just trophies. Steven Gerrard's the reason why Liverpool have an international fan base, by the way. Like people need to deep this. We could have easily been the Tottenham Hotspur. He's the reason why he kept us afloat almost by himself for a whole lot of the years. And even the years where we were capable of winning league titles, he always performed. But there's reasons why, there are other reasons around him why we didn't win it all. And listen, when you go through Steven Gerrard's individual locker and all the awards he's won as an individual, it shows. Like I've seen this guy be a part of the World 11 next to Xavi and Iniesta in 08-09. Like we're talking levels to this game. So for me, Stevie G, listen, me and Terry disagree on this, but I have him number one. He's the only Liverpool, but also Terry has to be fair. He's the only Liverpool player I actually argue as number one. I really don't argue any other Liverpool player.
I get that. In fairness, like KDB's already in my top 5. He's already there, and I do have him above Steven Gerrard overall because I keep my logic consistent. It's the trophies that he has delivered and the consistency of his performances within that. I understand the counter that they've won trophies without him. You could argue, Liverpool used to win more trophies before Gerrard arrived, so Gerrard's taking your team backwards. If we use that same logic, so it's not.
No, that's not the same logic.
It's the same logic in
That's
reverse.
not the same logic at all.
You're saying
the logic would be me saying Graham Souness is better than KDB because he's won more trophies. Because Graham Souness had a complete team for the KDB.
The difference with their argument is I don't put it all down to trophies, but I use trophies with a fairly big weight. So that typically is what happens when I say, "Oh, does that mean Luke Chadwick's better than Mahrez?" No.
I saw Lee Gunner's post, by the way. I'm going to ask you about, did you actually say the Grealish Chadwick thing?
So let me talk about the Grealish thing with Chadwick, right? Again, it's firstly, it was me bantering, so it's not a genuine true opinion. It's a little bit of a laugh and a joke. Secondly, though, I stand by what I said in terms of performance. But what I've been saying about him in the last 6 to 8 weeks, Grealish, is what we've seen in the last 2 months is a £100 million player. Creativity, goals, assists, dominant performances. In my opinion, up until the last 2 months, what we saw was a guy that looked good, doing very little in games. And he got defended by a lot of City fans. He'll come good, he'll come good. And I basically said, until he comes good, I'm calling him Luke Chadwick because City were just as good before him and just as good with him. He wasn't moving the needle for me. Now, that man is moving the needle. That man is delivering. And all I turn around and do is keep consistent with what I say and do. And if someone delivers the things I think are important, I praise them. If they don't, I criticize them. I don't really care who the individual is. And if
to be fair, just 5 months ago, people were running Grealish GA jokes. Like people were going like,
Alisson
exactly.
has
more GA than Grealish.
I had a bit of a laugh and a joke of it, but I always
he has to turn up though. He has to be consistent. I can't lie to you. But the Grealish slander, I agree with, and we have to keep energy consistent. If we want to laugh at Jadon Sancho for not doing it, we also have to laugh at Grealish for not doing it. But they're just in 2 different teams. But like, here's the thing: he has turned up. I can't lie. Grealish the last 2-3 months, I'd say probably post World Cup has turned up for me for Man City. But pre then, I think it was probably a fair argument to make because he just wasn't playing that well for City.
Yeah, some people ask me that's not the same logic. Well, I see it. In my head, it is. It's a cousin of the same logic. Then, if it isn't identical, if you're not going to praise KDB massively because the team was winning without him and he's maintained those levels, but yet you're praising a guy whose team won more before him than when he arrived into the team, the logic's off for me. So I don't really use either of those. I don't look at Gerrard and go, you helped make Liverpool worse because you were part of a worse era than the era that came before and after you. So like Gerrard's era was in the middle of 2 really good eras. I'm not going to slag off Gerrard as a footballer because he was in that era per se, although I think he's a part of that issue. Equally, I'm not going to discount KDB's brilliance because his team were very good when he arrived because he has to maintain those consistencies. We've seen Calvin Phillips play this year and we've seen Bravo come into this team, and we saw Mendy before he was kicked out the team, and Nolito. They've all joined a brilliant City team, and they weren't able to maintain those standards. So I do think that just you can, and that's why also it isn't just about trophies; it's about everything. So I don't really like the logic that because your team was winning.
But if I put Gerrard in the City team, they're probably winning more, if anything.
Yeah, maybe they will. But then what we would be looking at is how impactful when he plays is Steven Gerrard. And he may be massively important to them. Maybe he isn't. Now, yes, they win without KDB, but that's partly to do with the brilliance of Pep Guardiola. If we look at Sir Alex Ferguson, look at some of the average 11 to 12, 13 main starters he was using in his last 2 or 3 years. There's a debate to be had whether Pep could win with that team. Could Pep win with having to play Valencia as a right back and you know?
But that's a fair debate. That's why I'm telling you, I keep the energy consistent. Remember last time when we had the Pep debate, I told you, for me, he don't even overtake Wenger yet.
No, and I understand
that's why I contextualize it. Wenger beat Ferguson. He beat the best, like one of the best teams we've ever seen, and he won 3 titles in that era. So for me, like we can't equate just like 1 + 1 = 2 in football. Context matters. So for me, my energy, even if I'm arguing for a United thing, Terry, I keep the energy consistent. It's the truth.
No, I agree. Someone here says, Terry, you watched Gerrard, you know how good he was. And you've never found a single video of me saying he was a bad player, rubbish player, overrated player, crap player, flop. There's not a video out there or a tweet from me, maybe a sarcastic comment on the video, but you'll never see me say that. So when you say I know how good he was, I do know how good he was. But this is what you're doing in your brain, Maradon, is you're saying Terry doesn't think he's the best, therefore Terry thinks he's shit. That isn't what I've said. Your brain is doing crazy gymnastics and he's having a little bit of a woo, 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 woo moment. It's going, woo. Your brain's going, woo, woo, woo. It can't understand because I don't think he's as good as you think he is. I just think there's 4 or 5 players that have been better than him in the Premier League, but I still think he is fantastic. That's not slagging someone off in any capacity at all.